Okay, so let's talk about religion and God. And when I say God, I mean a traditional God, a God who's considered to be a person, someone who's always watching, someone who's judging. And I believe that there is a piece of my idea of God running through everyone. I don't believe that God is a person. And I'm going to try to I'm going to pick apart organized religion a little bit, and if this is the way that you live and something you subscribe to, that's okay. I'm just going to explain my point of view, and I'm going to start by discussing some things that are used as arguments for the existence of God. I want to first talk about people who say that science can't explain the complexity and order of life. God must have designed it to be this way, and arguably the earliest function of religion was to explain natural phenomena that primitive man could not otherwise understand. Lightning storms, volcanoes, for example, they're natural forces that were once attributed to gods or certain deities. We no longer need a god to explain that, so we call them what they are. There's no thunder god, there's no fire god or lightning god. We don't do this anymore. We don't think like this anymore because we know what causes these things. And even though there are things in this world that we don't yet understand and may never truly understand, there's no reason to just make up an explanation. In effect, belief in God is not really an answer. It's simply a way of saying, I don't know. And this begs the question, complexity is not the mark of an intelligent design. If you're walking down the beach and you see a watch laying in the sand, if design were truly responsible for everything, there would be no fundamental difference between a rock and a watch, because both would have been designed by an intelligent creator. Thus, we would not be able to recognize design from non-design, and the terms would be obsolete. Design exists purely in contrast to naturally occurring phenomena. And if complexity requires a creator, who created God? This is perhaps the greatest problem with the idea of complexity by design. Invoking a deity does not solve the problem of complexity. It introduces a new problem. If all complex things really do require an intelligent creator, then why is that creator himself not bound to the same rules? Would that complex deity not require an even more complex creator, and so on and so on for infinity? The complexity of the universe is something that scientists continue to explore, and we may never have all the answers, but there's nothing wrong with that. Not knowing the answer to a question is not a valid excuse for making up a fairy tale to explain it. Okay, so God's existence is proven by Scripture, and you'll hear this when talking with people or debating or having any type of conversation when it comes to religion or God or things like that. And most religions have holy books that are revered as true accounts. Scripture is considered sacred because it's either inspired or directly dictated by the God of a certain religion. And many of the people who adhere to these religions claim that their scriptures prove the existence of their deity. The Bible and the Quran, for example, are held up by many believers as both guides for belief and historical accounts of reality. Many believers claim that their holy book of choice is uniquely perfect, and this is suggesting its divine origin. This argument presupposes its premise. The people who hold up their holy scripture as evidence are the same people who already believe it's true. In doing so, it falls into the fallacy of begging the question, where an argument's question presupposes its answer. It's no different than saying, this is true because I believe it. Documents are not self-authenticating. Just because something is written in a book does not mean that it's true. There are millions of fictional stories throughout history and plenty of other books that claim to be factual but have been proven false. The existence of Scripture does not automatically prove anything about the veracity of what those Scriptures contain or the things that they claim to be true, especially because Scriptures themselves are full of contradictions. Ultimately, they are books that were written by fallible humans, and though there may be some grains of truth within them, there is also a lot of speculation and mythical things included. So with myth out of the way, a lot of the things that you'll read in holy books, they seem magical, and it's possible that it's because they're out of date. If something is perfect, if something is defined, it will stand the test of time. It will not lose credibility. It won't lose momentum with what it says throughout time. It will remain strong. It will remain firm. And this brings me to people who believe that morality stems from their God or their religion, and without God or religion, we could not be good people. It's frequently held up as a model of correct or moral behavior, and most of these books contain rules for how people must live in order to reach heaven or some similar blessed afterlife, and failure to follow these rules often means eternal banishment or punishment, suffering. On the other side, a person who follows these rules is godly, is also presumed to be a moral, upright person. And this is where I'm going to get into morals, as well as some of the things that these books claim change and fall out of fashion. Religious texts are generally ancient, and they reflect the values of the times when they were written. Over time, things change. Our minds change. Our ideas change. Our views of what is acceptable shift as our cultures progress, which makes many things found in the Bible or the Quran seem outdated and dubiously problematic. Slavery. There are some people who still believe that slavery is moral. The vast majority of modern Christians are likely to admit support for the ownership of another person. However, the Bible has many references to slavery, detailing rules for how to do it. Example, Leviticus chapter 25, verses 44 through 46. Your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them you may buy slaves, which is basically saying you can make slaves from neighboring nations, but do not enslave your own people. Exodus 21, chapter 21, verse 20 through 21, clarifies how a slave owner would be punished for striking a slave. They are not to be punished if the slave recovers after a day or two, since the slave is their property. So you can abuse your slaves, and as long as they don't die within a couple days, you're well within your rights as a slave owner. This really sounds like a moral code that we need to hold true today. Am I right? Come on, people. As far as God himself, if he was a him or a she or whoever, being moral, in my opinion, with the things that go on a daily basis, God is either impotent, evil, or non-existent. Most religions will claim an all-powerful, all-loving, benevolent deity. Physical reality contradicts this claim. Terrible things happen to people every single day. Children die tragically and young. Natural disasters wipe out entire parts of the world. People die in accidents and from disease. These things do not suggest a righteous and compassionate God. They suggest that God is either powerless, cruel, or non-existent. And worse still is the concept of hell, where non-believers suffer in eternal torment just for disbelieving in God. And not only disbelieving, you could be a believer, but if you choose the wrong God, you're to be punished for that as well. If the Christian religion is the right one, every Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Jew, they're all going to burn in hell. And you can reference this in the Bible, in the books of John, Thessalonians, Revelation. It's everywhere. And I can even make it true for other religions. In the Quran, chapter 3, verse 85, whoever desires other than Islam as a religion, never will it be accepted from him, and he, in the hereafter, will be among the losers. Come on. An all-loving God would surely not damn his children to an eternity of torture and pain simply for being born into a culture that believes in the wrong deity or in no deity, follows the wrong holy book, attends the wrong type of church services, etc. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Sam Harris, but he has a book, I believe it's called The End of Faith, and this is not going to be a direct quote, but from what I remember, he says that when something good happens to a believer, believers often attribute that to God. When a disaster occurs, believers will explain that God's will is mysterious and cannot be comprehended by mortals. These two claims contradict each other. If God's will cannot be comprehended, how do we know that he has good intentions at all? It certainly does not, lay a solid foundation for the claim of God as the ultimate source of morality. How about belief in God would not be so widespread if God didn't exist. He must be real because so many people believe in him. Ultimately, the idea that a large group of people believing in something automatically makes it true is a logical fallacy. It's called argumentum ad populum. Widespread belief in something does not make it real, and things can exist in reality regardless of whether you believe in them or not. The truth is true even if no one believes it, and untrue claims are still untrue even if everyone believes them. Throughout history, popular beliefs have been proven wrong repeatedly as new evidence and more advanced technology comes into existence. Geocentrism, for example. People believe that the Earth was the center of the universe. This has obviously been proven wrong by scientists. Galileo, Copernicus, Kepler. Our space program today makes it abundantly clear that planets orbit suns not just in this galaxy, but in all of them. Even with this, there are still people today who believe in geocentrism regardless of the evidence against it. If you think that that's crazy, there are websites to support it. GalileoWasWrong.com, FixedEarth.com. That insist that centuries of scientific evidence are false. Their beliefs have no effect on reality. Regardless of what these people believe, the Earth continues to rotate around the sun as it always has. Okay, so even if the widespread nature of religion gave significance to its claims, it would be difficult to determine exactly which claims it supports. The world is made up of countless religions, and none of them agree about the nature of God. If God were truly responsible for religions being so widespread, why don't these religions have more in common? Most religions will claim that theirs is the only true religion. If religion is meant to describe something that exists in physical reality rather than a subjective mental or emotional truth, every conflicting religion cannot be correct, and it's possible that all of them are wrong. So, prayer is often used as an argument. God answers prayers, therefore he must be real. I forget where it was done. It exists. A study of heart patients is what it was in 6 separate hospitals. Sought to determine whether prayers from strangers would have any effect on a person's recovery. So it was around 2,000 people who were followed for 30 days after their heart surgery. Researchers found absolutely no link between prayer and recovery. But there was a significant difference between those who were aware of the fact that they were being prayed for and those who did not know. Those who knew ended up suffering more complications, probably due to the additional stress it caused. Being told that a high number of people are praying for your recovery might increase how severe you would perceive your illness to be, and that would probably negatively affect your recovery. These are just some things to think about. To date, I don't think there have been any reputable scientific studies showing any clear link between prayer and healing. That's a little bit of where I stand. I'm just getting started. There will be more posts. There will be more publications. Thank you.